You walk into a room, and everything changes. You haven't spoken, no one's said a word, but somehow, you're already becoming someone else. Straighter posture, softer voice, a version of you that isn't really yours. What just happened isn't nerves. It's the ancient, existential terror of being seen. Jean-Paul Sartre called it hell. Not fire, not demons, other people. Their gaze, their judgment, their power to trap you in an identity you didn't choose. In this video, we're going to unlock the true horror behind Sartre's famous line, "Hell is other people." I'll descend into no exit, explore shame, the gaze, and the psychological machinery that reduces you from subject to spectacle. No answers, no escape, just the question, who are you when everyone's watching and none of them see you? You don't need to be naked to feel exposed. You just need to be seen, truly seen, or worse, misunderstood and frozen in that misunderstanding. And for reasons most can't explain, that moment can feel like violence. To understand why, we start not with Sartre, but with a mirror. Sociologist Charles Horton Cooley called it the looking glass self. I am not who I think I am. I am not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am. Your self-image is built not from within, but through imagined reflection. Your voice changes around authority. You still flinch at memories of someone who misjudged you 10 years ago. And here's the terrifying part. What if they were wrong, but you built your whole identity around their lie? Now enter Sartre. In Being and Nothingness, he describes a moment you're peeking through a keyhole, absorbed, free, then footsteps. Someone might be watching. In an instant, your world flips. You become the object. You exist now in their gaze. And as Sartre writes, I am no longer master of my being. That moment is what he called the look. It doesn't wound your body, but your existence. Your fluid, evolving self is frozen into a stereotype, a moment, a mistake. Even if it's false, it sticks. And every time you're seen, you feel yourself becoming that version. That's not observation, that's possession. In a world of cameras, comments, and constant visibility, this becomes our default state. We live under imagined surveillance, editing ourselves in advance. We stop being and start performing. We become what we fear they think we are. And it gets darker. Modern neuroscience shows that social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain. Being misjudged, mocked, or misunderstood leaves scars you can't see, but you feel them every day. That's why public shame destroys people, not because of the event, but because they can never reclaim their reflection. They become haunted by a version of themselves they didn't create and can't erase. Imagine trying to explain who you are, but every room you enter is already filled with someone else's story about you. That's not life, that's hell. And that's exactly what Sartre meant. Not because people are evil, but because perception has power. And the more they see you, the less you remain. So the question isn't why is being seen painful? The question is, why did we ever believe we could be seen and survive it? Shame is by nature recognition. I see myself because someone sees me. We've all heard the quote, hell is other people. It gets tossed around in memes and edgy t-shirts, usually to signal introversion or social fatigue. But Sartre wasn't making a joke. He wasn't talking about annoying people or bad parties. He was talking about the existential horror of being perceived. Let's go deeper. In Sartre's philosophy, the self is not a static thing. It's fluid, made and remade through experience, through action, through freedom. But all of that collapses the moment someone else sees you. Why? Because in their gaze, you are no longer a becoming. You are a thing, an object, a character in their story, a fixed point in their mental universe. That transformation is what Sartre calls the look. Imagine this. You're alone in a room. You dance, you speak, you experiment, you're free. But then someone enters. You freeze. Their eyes change everything. Suddenly, you see yourself as they might be seeing you. And that vision is invasive. You no longer control the narrative. You're no longer the subject of your life. You're a subject in their world. That's the look. and it creates what Sartre calls shame. Shame, in this sense, is not guilt. Guilt is about what you've done. Shame is about who you've become in someone else's mind. It's not something you choose. It hits you like a seizure. It's existential, sudden, bodily, irreversible. Shame is the recognition of the fact that I am as the other sees me. And what if the other sees you as weak, or pathetic, or dangerous, or stupid? You're trapped in their vision, and you can't edit it. That's the prison Sartre was describing in No Exit. Let's revisit that play. 3 people, a single room, no windows, no mirrors, no escape. Each one is desperate to be seen in a certain way, noble, desirable, innocent. But the only eyes available to them are the other 2, and those eyes are merciless. Estelle, for example, cannot find herself unless she's reflected, literally. She begs for a mirror, but there isn't one. So she turns to the other characters, hoping to see herself through their validation. But they withhold it, or twist it, or weaponize it. That's when it becomes clear the characters are each other's torturers, not because they're evil, but because they are gazes that will never align with the self each person wants to project. Hell is not their presence, hell is their perception. And this isn't just theater, it's the framework of everyday life. Psychologists talk about this too. Danish philosopher Dan Zahavi calls shame an immediate, non-influential, self-conscious emotion. You don't analyze it, you feel it, because your self has just been ripped out of your control. But Sartre wasn't the only one to see this trap. The French-Algerian psychiatrist and philosopher Frantz Fanon brings a critical dimension to Sartre's theory of the look. In Black Skin, White Masks, Fanon shows that for the colonized person, especially the black subject, the gaze is not just existential, it is historical, it is violent, it is programmed. Where Sartre says we become objects in someone else's mind, Fanon shows how that objectification is racialized and enforced through empire, education, language, media, and law. You're not just seen, you're pre-seen, prejudged, and pre-written before you even enter the room. I am overdetermined from without. Fanon uses this term, overdetermination, to describe how the black subject is not seen as an individual, but as a racial signifier, trapped beneath centuries of imposed meaning. Your body, your voice, your skin, they aren't yours. They've been colonized by interpretation. I am the slave not of the idea others have of me, but of my appearance. Appearance here isn't just physicality, it's spectacle. It's the moment the black body becomes a screen onto which white society projects its fears, fantasies, and fictions. Here, double consciousness, a concept from W.E.B. Du Bois, enters with force. You are forced to see yourself twice, once through your own experience and once through the gaze of the colonizer, the oppressor, the dominant cultural framework. And these two selves rarely align. This is where Sartre's The Look becomes institutionalized. For Fanon, being seen isn't just uncomfortable, it's a trauma, a daily one. To be looked at under a racialized system is to be fixed, contained, and stripped of agency. You are not just known, you are told who you are again and again, often violently. You're not invited to be. You are only allowed to be what the world already decided you are. This makes Sartre's existential trap even more terrifying. Because in Fanon's world, you don't get to retreat into subjectivity. Your interior life is always under siege by a social script written before you were born. Even your attempt to reclaim yourself through education, language, or assimilation risks reinforcing the gaze that imprisons you. Fanon writes about trying to speak French perfectly in order to gain dignity in a white society, and realizing that this too was a form of self-erasure. So the gaze isn't just a moment, it's a system. It's embedded in law, language, commerce, and power. And this brings us to a terrifying paradox. You must be seen to exist, but being seen is how you are erased. If Fanon reveals how the gaze colonizes from the outside, Simone de Beauvoir shows how it invades from within. In The Second Sex, de Beauvoir writes that woman is not born, she is made. And she is made in part through the gaze of men. But, unlike Sartre's abstract other, this gaze is everywhere, all the time, and from the earliest age. A girl is taught not simply how to be, but how to be seen. She learns that to be a woman is to be looked at, to be desirable, delicate, pleasing, not to herself, but to others. She grows up knowing that her body is never just hers. It's a surface, a display that exists in a social economy of approval, commentary, and control. She learns to see herself being seen, to anticipate the looks, and eventually to curate herself for them. This is internalized surveillance, a Sartrean hell that doesn't require a room or a jailer, because the jailer is already inside. The gaze becomes a voice. That voice becomes your mirror. So even when she's alone, she is not free. She adjusts her clothing, she softens her voice, she second-guesses her tone in an email, not because she is vain or unsure or fake, but because she is performing survival. To be seen in the wrong way is not just awkward, it's dangerous. Beauvoir's insight is that womanhood is shaped under constant visibility, and that this visibility becomes a form of ontological distortion. Her self is fractured, caught between her lived experience and the socially projected image of what a woman should be. She is not just looked at, she is taught to look at herself through the imagined gaze of men and then to assess her value accordingly. Sartre describes the objectification of being seen as a moment of shame. Beauvoir shows that for women, it is not a moment, it is a lifetime. A man fears being misjudged, a woman fears being misread, and then punished for it. And the worst part? Even when she tries to reject the performance, to claim her subjectivity, the gaze doesn't go away. The audience remains, the comments remain, the social script remains. So she is left with a question so many women carry silently. Who am I when no one is watching? And why does that self feel so faint, so foreign, so unreal? I am always conscious of myself in the presence of others. I no longer possess myself, I belong to them. In Sartre's No Exit, the door to the room never opens. There are no chains, no fire, just three people, and the inescapable trap of mutual perception. Each character wants to be seen a certain way, each fails, and so they become torturers, not by violence, but by staring too long. That was Sartre's hell. But our hell is worse, because now the room has no walls. The audience has no face. The gaze isn't one person, it's a network, timeline, a feed, and it never looks away. Social media is the new mirror, but unlike Estelle in No Exit, we don't beg for one. We're surrounded by them. Selfies, stories, feeds, tags, face filters, view counts. We don't need mirrors, we've become them. We don't just see ourselves, we see ourselves being seen, liked, shared, commented on, or worse, ignored. But these aren't innocent glances. They're coded, they're quantified, they're shaped by algorithms that reward outrage, punishment, extremity. In Sartre's world, one person's judgment could freeze you. Today, 1 million strangers can do it in a second. And the version of you they see, the clip, the post, the out-of-context quote, that version spreads, it calcifies. You try to explain, but the explanation gets fewer likes than the accusation. You try to clarify, but the thread has already moved on. You're not just seen, you're locked. You've become content, and content doesn't get to speak for itself. Being seen online is not validation, it's consumption. Before social media, you could walk away, reinvent yourself, change cities, jobs, styles. Now your past follows you. Old tweets, cringe photos, misinterpreted texts, screenshots of things you didn't even say but look like you did. The gaze used to require a room, now it only requires a screenshot. This is where the shame Sartre described becomes permanent, because there's no longer a distinction between who you are and what they remember. Your timeline becomes your tombstone. Your digital body gets pinned and reinterpreted forever, not by people who know you, but by people who know how to use you. And every post, every comment, every silence becomes evidence in a trial you didn't know you were part of. You want to be real, but what does real even mean when you're always watched? You want to be yourself, but every version of you is shaped by who's watching. So you become a performer. You say what they'll support. You hide what they'll cancel. You curate what they'll applaud. And then slowly you lose the sense that there was ever a you beneath the layers. Sartre's look has gone viral. We're no longer afraid of being seen. We're addicted to it. But that addiction is a mask over a deeper horror. We no longer know who we are when no one is watching. In No Exit, Sartre gives us Estelle, a woman so desperate for a mirror, she begs her fellow captives to become one. When I can't see myself, I begin to wonder if I truly exist. It's one of the most devastating confessions in existential literature. Because Estelle doesn't want to be seen in a raw, honest way. She wants to be confirmed as beautiful, desirable, clean of guilt. She wants the gaze to validate, not to reflect. But the room has no mirrors, only people. And people, when reduced to mirrors, are cruel. Estelle isn't alone. We are all Estelle now. We no longer ask, who am I? We ask, how am I doing? And we check for answers in pixels and metrics, not in mirrors, but in algorithms, not in dialogue, but in reaction. We measure our existence through engagement, likes, retweets, impressions. But these are not mirrors. They're surveillance devices wearing makeup, and they reflect not who we are, but who the machine thinks others will want to see. A well-lit version, a simplified version, an enraged version, an erotic version, never the whole. Like Estelle, we've outsourced our selfhood to others, then to code. But here's the deeper horror. When Sartre denied Estelle a mirror, he was illustrating the tragedy of being dependent on others for our identity. But we've gone further. We now demand mirrors that never stop reflecting, even if they lie. And the more we stare into them, the more we vanish. Because these mirrors don't reflect the self, they construct it. And once constructed, they broadcast it. And once broadcast, it cannot be reclaimed. What was once a private image has become a public record. What was once shame is now content. What was once a self is now a file. Sartre placed his characters in a single room, no windows, no exit. But we don't live in that room. We live in something far more terrifying. We live in millions of rooms, endless timelines, infinite feeds, each one a panopticon, each one a stage. We wake up in a room called Instagram. We scroll through another called Twitter. We perform in Zoom calls, in texts, in carefully timed stories. And every one of these rooms has eyes, but none have faces. We are seen constantly, but rarely known. And still we perform, because visibility has become the price of existence. But here's the paradox. Every performance fragments you further. Every platform demands a version of you. But there is no room for your contradictions, no space for your becoming. Only the version that gets seen and clicked and saved. And when the wrong version is captured, when the crowd misunderstands or freezes you in a single failure, you can't get out. The digital architecture remembers what your body has outgrown. Your worst day becomes your most permanent artifact. Your lowest thought becomes your highest ranked result. And so you try to change rooms, new account, new tone, new face. But the gaze follows you. Hell is no longer other people. Hell is what they archived. Hell is your mirror, cached forever. Hell is the silence after your story goes viral for the wrong reason. And unlike Sartre's characters, we still believe there's an audience out there that will finally see us correctly. That if we just post the right photo, say the right thing, or vanish for the right amount of time, someone will finally reflect us as we are. But they won't, because we're not looking at each other anymore. We're looking through each other for meaning, for distraction, for proof that we exist, and in doing so, we lose the very thing we were trying to preserve. A self that was whole, a gaze that was kind, a mirror that didn't demand performance. Sartre said there is no exit, but in this world, maybe the true horror is that we no longer want one. Freedom is what you do with what has been done to you. We've wandered through Sartre's room, we've peered through Fanon's lens, we've lived inside Beauvoir's mirror, and now we're here, logged in, watched, compressed. So let's ask again. Why does being seen feel like hell? Because being seen is rarely the same as being known. Because we are not just afraid of judgment, we are made of it. Because identity, once surrendered to perception, becomes a stage we're forced to keep performing on, even when the audience has changed, or left, or turned hostile. You are not who you think you are. You are not even who they think you are. You are who you fear they might think you are. And that fear builds walls. Those walls become rooms. Rooms that look like timelines. Rooms where the door is supposed to open, where you were promised connection, validation, attention. But Sartre was right. The doors don't open, not because they're locked, but because we're not really trying to leave. Because outside that room is the terrifying idea that we are nothing, unless someone is watching. And when no one's watching, the self unravels. So we stay, we scroll, we curate, we apologize, we perform, we ask, who am I without their gaze? And the silence that follows is not peaceful. It's annihilating. The irony is unbearable. We long to be seen, but not misunderstood. We long to be understood, but not exposed. We long to be invisible, but not forgotten. And so we live here, in this impossible middle, visible enough to survive, invisible enough to protect what's left, always waiting for someone to reflect us back correctly, but they never do. And maybe they never can. Because no one sees you as you are, they only see you as they need you to be, a villain, a victim, a joke, a moment, but never the whole. So maybe Sartre's play was never fiction. Maybe no exit was prophecy. We no longer die and enter hell. We log in. And the more we try to explain ourselves, reclaim ourselves, escape ourselves, the more we become trapped in the very performance we hoped would free us. There is no answer. There is no exit. And maybe that's the most honest thing we can say. But still, you're here, watching, listening, feeling the weight of the gaze. So before you vanish into another feed, ask yourself, what part of you belongs to you alone? And what will it take to get it back? If this made you feel seen in the wrong way or the right, subscribe.